Hey guys, tonight we journey back to one of the oldest civilizations on Earth, the dusty, sun-baked heart of ancient Mesopotamia. You're standing ankle-deep in loose sand, the kind that sneaks into your shoes, your nose, your soul. The wind whispers across the flat plains, picking up centuries of forgotten sighs. The air tastes like clay and memory. Around you, buildings rise not of stone, but of mud brick, cracked, dry, and quietly dissolving into the very earth they came from. Everything is dust here. It clings to the reeds. It dances in sunbeams. It lines your throat with a scratchy reminder. You're not just passing through history, you're breathing it in. You might think dust is a minor annoyance, but in Mesopotamia, it's practically a citizen. It's a god. And yes, you're gonna be sneezing a lot. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, if you're listening from somewhere far or strange or beautifully ordinary, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I'd love to see where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across dry earth cracked like old paint. There's no grass, just pale beige dirt that crunches faintly beneath your sandals. You follow a path worn down not by wheels, but by thousands of years of walking feet. Priests, traders, potters, scribes, shepherds. Every one of them left a little dust behind, and took some with them. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers curve in the distance like long silver scars. But you're not there for the water. You're here for what's in between, the baked, powdery land that made cities rise, then swallowed them whole. They say Mesopotamia is the cradle of civilization, but it's also kinda like the world's oldest attic, full of priceless stuff, but absolutely covered in a thick layer of, you guessed it, dust. And not just any dust. This dust is ancient. This dust might have once been the corner of a king's robe. It might have clung to the face of a temple priestess. It might have held the last breath of a clay worker 3,000 years ago. Comfortable, right? Historians still argue whether the Mesopotamians truly worshipped dust or merely tolerated it with exhausted reverence. But what's certain is that it was everywhere, and it meant something. You duck under a wooden archway, entering what would have been a home. It's nothing fancy. Mud brick walls, a central courtyard, maybe a woven mat or two, and dust. Layered, fine, and inevitable. There's no point sweeping. It returns before you finish. In this world, dust is more than weather. It's time. It's silence. It's the slow erosion of everything solid. And in a strange way, it keeps things alive, preserving footprints, protecting tablets, settling into the grooves of cuneiform like protective ash. You sit cross-legged on a dusty mat, watching the sunlight filter through a thin cloth roof. You wonder, if you stayed still long enough, would you turn to dust too? Just another shape outlined in powder. A nearby child scampers past, coated in dirt but grinning. His feet kick up a familiar cloud. No one scolds him. There's no point. You can't fight it. You just live in it. A reed flute drifts in from another room, thin and reedy. It mixes with the low rustle of wind and the occasional dry cough. People here are used to it, lungs lined with the stuff. No air purifier, no allergy meds, just the slow acceptance of a dusty existence. And it's not without charm. You watch a woman shaping a bowl from river clay. As it dries in the sun, the wind coats it with a faint shimmer. Not glitter, not sand, just the same fine ancient matter everything here seems to be made from. You can almost hear the dust sigh. In the distance, someone chants, a prayer maybe, a hymn to a god of wind or rain, or possibly dust itself. You smile. Even the divine has to cope with housekeeping. So here you are, at the edge of civilization and decay. Your feet are dirty, your eyes a little dry, your spirit oddly calm. The dust doesn't hurry, it doesn't rise or fall too quickly. It just settles, like you will. You wake, if you can call it that, to the soft rasp of wind moving through an alley of half-crumbling walls. There is no glass in the windows, just open holes that let the morning heat and the desert breath slide in together. You brush dust from your eyelashes with the back of your hand, but it's no use. More will arrive. It always does. You've spent the night in a Sumerian city, maybe, or Lagash. Somewhere with sun-bleached mud walls, canals that smell faintly of fish and silt, and alleyways so narrow 2 people can't pass without brushing tunics. And that's fine. Personal space hasn't been invented yet. You rise and step outside, sandals whispering against the packed earth. The first thing you notice? The color of the city. It's not gray, it's not brown, it's, well, dust-colored. Somewhere between beige and burnt clay. The buildings blend right into the landscape, each home a slightly different tone depending on how recently it was patched, remudded, or collapsed and rebuilt. They don't build with stone here, not often. Stones for mountains, and Mesopotamia has none. So they make do with mud. Mud and straw dried in the sun until it's just strong enough to hold back the wind. Kind of like your willpower on a Monday. You pass a woman carrying a large jug on her shoulder. She's humming something simple, and her face is half covered with a scarf, not for modesty, but for dust control. Even 5,000 years ago, people understood the power of particle management. Historians still debate whether these early cities had formal sanitation. The streets have gutters, yes, but mostly for runoff and occasionally fish bones. It's more of a rinse and repeat system. Sweep out the front, wait for wind, repeat. You pause beside a wall where a child has scratched some sort of drawing. Maybe a bull, maybe a goat, maybe an attempt at a god. You can't tell. The dust has already softened the lines. Give it a few months and the image will be gone completely, like a dream you forgot the moment you woke up. You move toward the city center, following the smell of baking bread. Flat, warm, probably carried in someone's armpit like a purse. There's a bakery, its oven shaped like an overturned bowl. Inside, a young man slaps dough against the hot surface, then turns to fan himself with a reed mat. The air is thick, not just with heat, but with dust kicked up by all the morning feet and sandal shuffles. You buy a piece of bread. It's crunchy, mostly on purpose. There are no trees here. Shade is a luxury. But some alleys are narrow enough that the buildings themselves protect you, if only from the sun. Not from the ever-present powder that dances in slanted light like tiny ghosts. A group of laborers passes, carrying baskets of clay. One of them sneezes, twice. He doesn't even pause to apologize. You think, yeah, that tracks. You stop at a public well. Water is precious here and controlled by temple officials who know how many jars each household is allowed. You reach for the rope, pull up a jug, and sip carefully. It's warm, slightly gritty, hydrating in the same way a wet sock is technically clean. They say dust in Mesopotamia gets into everything, and by now, you believe it. It's in your ears, your food, your prayers. You pass a shrine, small, with offerings set beneath a carved stone. The image is weathered, vague, but someone has left a palmful of lentils and a figurine shaped from river clay. You lean in. The figurine is simple. Round eyes, open mouth, squat body. A household god maybe, or a charm to keep sandstorms at bay. It doesn't matter. It will dissolve in the next heavy rain. But then again, that's probably part of the plan. Here, in this place, nothing is made to last. And yet, everything does. A passerby notices you squinting at the figure. He grins, points to it, and says something that sounds like Ashaku. You nod politely, pretending to understand, but make a mental note. That name again. Later, you'll learn more about him. But for now, the god of dust is just a whisper in a dusty breeze.
a presence you feel more than see. You duck into a shaded nook and chew your dusty bread. Around you, people sweep. They always sweep. It's not about winning, it's about trying. There's a lesson in that, but your brain is too heat-addled to pull it out. Maybe later. Maybe in the cool of the evening, when the dust settles again.
You make your way down a narrow lane where every footstep seems to puff up a memory. At least that's how it feels, like each cloud of dust you kick up contains some ancient secret. And in a way, it does. You arrive at a shaded courtyard near the edge of the city. Low benches circle a wide table of sun-dried clay, where half a dozen scribes squat with serious brows and sore knees. Their tools? A stylus carved from reed and a smooth, flat clay tablet. Their medium? The very same earth that coats your skin, your clothes, your thoughts. You're invited to try. Kneeling beside one scribe, you're handed a soft lump of clay still damp from the canal. It smells like river mud and sun-warmed tools. You press your stylus into it tentatively, just a mark, then another, and slowly you begin to write. Not words, not at first, but wedges and lines, arranged just so. It's called cuneiform, and this right here is one of the first written languages in the world, developed not for poetry, but for bookkeeping, tax records, barley counts, goat rosters. Historians still argue whether the earliest scribes were poets at heart or just glorified accountants. But one thing's clear, without dust, there'd be no tablets, and without tablets, we'd know nothing. You smudge a character, and the scribe next to you clucks his tongue. He takes your tablet, smooths it with the edge of his palm, and starts over. Swift, precise, silent. He doesn't even look up. This is his life, imprinting orders from priests and merchants onto tiny rectangles of earth, then letting the sun harden them into truth. And yet, not all truths are eternal. You reach for another finished tablet, one that's been drying for days. But when you touch it, the edge crumbles in your hand. One careless nudge and the word oxen becomes powder. History has no backups. There's a quiet reverence here for the fragility of it all. One scribe dips his hand into a small bowl and sprinkles fine dust across a nearly dried tablet. Why? To keep it from cracking too quickly. Dust, you learn, is both enemy and caretaker. You lean back, stretching your legs, and notice a shelf stacked with old documents. But the shelf is also clay and slowly slumping. Some tablets are chipped, others have fused together during a rain. The past doesn't just fade here, it melts. A small boy, likely a scribe in training, tiptoes across the courtyard holding a particularly large tablet above his head like it's treasure, which of course it is. It's a hymn to a goddess, or a legal dispute over a stolen donkey, or possibly a bread recipe. You never really know until you read the last line. And even then, well, interpretation is half the fun. The boy sets the tablet down with care, blowing gently across its surface to clear the grit. You watch him, marveling at how dust is both barrier and guide. These letters, if you can call them that, rely on shadows cast in tiny valleys. Too much dust and the meaning's lost. Too little and the surface cracks. It's a balancing act that's oddly beautiful. The head scribe clears his throat. He's old, with a beard the color of river silt and fingers permanently creased. He beckons you forward. He offers a story, not told aloud, but pressed into clay. He hands you a small tablet and waits. You read. It's the tale of a man who disrespected the temple by letting dust coat the altar. The gods responded by turning his goats infertile and giving his wife a rash that looked suspiciously like lichen. The moral is unclear, but the message? Dust is sacred. Ignore it at your peril. You glance around the courtyard. Every surface is covered with it. Light coats, heavy smears, handprints, footprints. History and housekeeping locked in battle. You try to clean a bit of your tunic, brushing the fabric with a flat palm. The dust comes off and resettles higher up. The scribes chuckle softly.
One of them gestures to the sky, where a thin veil of particles turns the sunlight hazy. He says a word that sounds like protect. Maybe he's talking about the gods. Maybe he's talking about the dust. Hard to say. Maybe it's the same thing. You rise and bow politely. The scribes nod. You leave with clay under your fingernails and a strange peace in your chest. Dust, you realize, isn't just matter. It's memory. It's language. It's everything that used to be something and still is. You walk slowly, savoring the crunch of the earth beneath your feet. The air is warm, thick with history and heat. And as the wind picks up again, you turn your face into it, let the dust coat your cheeks, and smile. You're starting to understand.
You follow a path out of the scribe's courtyard, past low mud brick walls and stone-lined canals. The city hums softly behind you. Traders arguing over barley prices, dogs napping in doorways, someone whistling a 5-note scale you don't recognize. The sky is pale and enormous, cloudless, the air still as if even the breeze has stopped to listen. Ahead stands a modest shrine, half forgotten at the city's edge. It's not grand like the temples of Ishtar or Enlil. No incense burns here, no priests chant. Just a small alcove carved into a wall, shaded by a woven reed mat hanging limp in the stillness. Inside is a clay figure. It's crude, hastily shaped, the surface uneven, the features simple. Wide eyes, short arms, and a jagged line etched across the base like maybe a mouth, maybe a frown, or teeth, or dust. Hard to say. You kneel. There's no ceremony, no instruction, but it feels right. You breathe in, and with that breath comes the dry, faintly metallic taste of the land. This is Ashaku, the spirit of dust. Not quite a god, not quite a demon, more like a persistent reminder. A presence in every forgotten corner, in every cracked jar, in every dry cough after a windy morning. You study the figure, and something about it makes you want to sneeze, or laugh, or maybe both. It's absurd. The Mesopotamians had gods for everything: love, war, beer, childbirth, rivers, stars. But dust? Really? And yet here he is, not demanding sacrifice, not hurling lightning bolts, just sitting, watching, settling. Historians still argue whether Ashaku was a literal deity, a metaphor, or a cultural in-joke passed along by temple janitors with a dry sense of humor. Some believe he was tied to disease, because where there was dust, there was often illness. Others suggest he symbolized time itself, the slow erosion of everything, the quiet return of all things to earth. Either way, people respected him, or feared him, or possibly both. A bit like taxes. You look closer. The figure's body is hollow. Inside, dust. Just dust. Pale gray, finely ground, packed in tightly like a secret. You reach out, lightly touch the rim of the cavity. A faint breeze stirs the particles. They shift, rise, hover. The shrine seems to breathe. You hear a woman's voice behind you, soft, casual. He doesn't ask much, just that we notice. You turn. She's old, eyes like worn leather, holding a broom made from bundled twigs. She nods toward the shrine. We leave a little food sometimes, or sweep nearby, keep him company. You ask, quietly, what happens if people forget? She smiles, shrugs. Then the dust comes faster. She moves on, sweeping with no real urgency, just rhythm. You stay a moment longer. Ashaku's shrine isn't grand. It doesn't sparkle, but something about it feels true. Like it's always been here, like it always will be. Not loud, not glorious, just present. You stand slowly, brushing your knees. The dust sticks, of course. You give up trying to pat it off. Around the corner, a man is cleaning a statue, likely a more popular god. He blows hard into the crevices, scowls, then curses as the dust flies directly back into his face. You smile. Ashaku wins again. In this world, dust always wins. It outlasts kings. It outlives floods.
It settles on every hope and fear equally. You can burn cities, bury enemies, build monuments, and still someday, someone will brush a layer of dust from your name and wonder who you were. You begin walking back toward the city center. The streets are busier now. Children run barefoot. A merchant is arguing with a goat. Life goes on. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, dust. You pass a vendor selling amulets. Among the polished stones and carved shells, one item catches your eye. A small clay pendant shaped like a swirling spiral. The vendor grins. For Ashaku, he says, keeps your home quiet. You buy it, not because you believe exactly, but because, well, who couldn't use a little quiet? You hang the amulet on your belt. It bounces gently as you walk. A faint puff of dust rises with every step. And if you listen closely, it almost sounds like laughter.
The air grows heavier as the day edges past noon. You squint against the brightness bouncing off the clay walls. Even the flies seem to move slower now. You find yourself drawn toward the towering shape at the city's heart, the ziggurat. It's not your average temple. It's a monument stacked like a divine layer cake. Wide at the bottom, narrower at each ascending level, until finally a small sanctuary sits perched on top like a cherry you'll never quite reach. You stand at its base, head tilted back. The bricks shimmer slightly under the sun, and yes, you guessed it, there's dust clinging to every single one. You begin to climb. The steps are long, shallow, and worn smooth by centuries of priestly sandals. You feel the heat rise with every level, the baked mud radiating warmth even into the soles of your feet. Your tunic sticks to your back, your breath grows shorter, and the dust, it thickens. By the second tier, you're brushing it off your arms. By the third, it's in your eyebrows. By the fourth, it's between your teeth. At this point, you're fairly certain you've ingested enough Mesopotamian sediment to qualify as an archaeological site. But you keep going, because at the top, according to a young temple assistant who looked far too cheerful for someone working outdoors, you'll find not just a view, but understanding. You finally reach the summit. There, in the small open sanctuary, you find no gold, no jewels, no fire-spewing idol. Just a platform, some scorched offerings, and wind. Lots of wind. It whistles softly through the gaps in the wall. It spins dust into lazy spirals on the stone floor. It brushes against your skin like a sigh, warm and indifferent. You kneel beside a small altar. The surface is pitted, the edges chipped, but in the center rests a bowl. It's empty, except for a perfect ring of fine, pale dust. You don't touch it. You remember what the old woman said. He doesn't ask much, just that we notice. You do. You really do. Historians still debate the function of ziggurats. Were they temples, observatories, stairways for the gods to descend? Whatever their purpose, one thing is clear. They were high enough for the heavens to notice you, and for you to notice just how small, dusty, and temporary everything else was. You sit for a while, looking out over the city. It stretches toward the horizon in soft, sun-washed tones. You can see the rivers curling like ribbons of tarnished silver, the markets bustling below, and the faint outlines of farmland patchworked between them. And always, always, the dust. It rises from alleys, it rests on roofs, it forms tiny dunes against crumbling walls. It's not just a feature of this world, it is the world. A gust of wind kicks up a swirl around you, and you close your eyes, letting it coat your face. You imagine it seeping into your pores, whispering little secrets of barley harvests and forgotten kings. Below, a group of boys plays with sticks and dried reeds. They're pretending to be priests, waving their staffs and shouting made-up spells. One of them throws a handful of dirt in the air, and they all cheer like he summoned lightning. Maybe he has, in a dusty way. You chuckle softly and stand. The walk down is slower,
Not because your legs are tired, but because everything suddenly feels heavier. Not sad, just ancient. Like you're carrying time on your shoulders, and some of it has gotten into your sandals. At the base of the ziggurat, a man coughs as he sweeps a stone path. The dust just blows back behind him. He doesn't seem to mind. It's not about finishing. It's about doing. You pass him, nod, and he nods back. You feel changed. You've seen a god today. Or maybe you just saw the residue of thousands of years, trying not to be forgotten. You sit for a while, looking out over the city. It stretches toward the horizon in soft, sun-washed tones. You can see the rivers curling like ribbons of tarnished silver, the markets bustling below, and the faint outlines of farmland patchworked between them. And always, always, the dust. It rises from alleys, it rests on roofs, it forms tiny dunes against crumbling walls. It's not just a feature of this world, it is the world. A gust of wind kicks up a swirl around you, and you close your eyes, letting it coat your face. You imagine it seeping into your pores, whispering little secrets of barley harvests and forgotten kings. Below, a group of boys plays with. The sun dips slightly now, casting long ochre shadows across the streets of the city. A faint breeze kicks up again, and with it comes the sound of sweeping. It's everywhere. You notice it more now. Brooms scratching along stone, hands patting down dusty surfaces. The steady rhythm of tidying in a world where nothing stays clean. You follow one such rhythm to the temple courtyard, a wide open space framed by colonnades and shaded by reed canopies. The smell here is a heady mix of sun-warmed stone, incense, and yes, dust, always dust. A young acolyte is sweeping the ground, careful not to disturb the painted tiles beneath the grime. His broom, made of bound twigs, skitters softly. He's not in a rush. He's not even trying to remove all of it. You realize quickly, this isn't cleaning. This is ritual. You sit on the edge of a low wall watching. A group of priests walks past in clean robes that somehow stay clean for all of 10 seconds. One of them stops beside the boy, peers down, and offers a single nod. Not of approval, but recognition. The work is quiet, intentional, holy. The courtyard itself is modest. There are no golden idols, no grand fountains. Just smooth clay walls and rows of benches for those awaiting the god's attention. But the real worship happens in the act of care, of tending to this space, of acknowledging that even the gods need someone to sweep their front steps. You offer to help. The boy hands you another broom. It's lighter than you expect and oddly comfortable in your grip. You begin at one edge of the courtyard, matching his pace. Sweep forward, step left, sweep again. There's no talking, only the soft rustle of movement and the whisper of dust shifting like silk. It feels good, oddly meditative. You fall into rhythm, and as you do, your mind slows. You begin to notice small things. The way the sun hits a crack in the wall and makes it glow. The tiny lizard skittering between stones. The way the breeze lifts a curl of dust and sets it gently down again, like tucking in a child. You reach the center of the courtyard, where a low pedestal rises. Atop it is a statue, small, worn, and unmistakably important. This one isn't a shaku. It's a weather god, judging by the lightning bolt carved into his chest. But even he can't escape it. Dust clings to his beard, dulls the shine of his eyes, pools in the folds of his robe. The boy sees you looking and smiles. They all get dusty, he says, even the loud ones. You both gently brush the surface with your sleeves. The statue remains stoic, unmoved, but somehow more present, less forgotten. Historians still debate whether ancient Mesopotamians saw cleanliness as next to godliness or just a polite gesture before asking for rain. But sweeping, especially in temples, was undeniably sacred. To sweep was to maintain order, to remove chaos, or at the very least, to try. A group of older women enter the courtyard, carrying bowls of offerings. Grains, oil, some type of fruit you don't recognize. One woman carefully places a handful of lentils at the statue's feet. Before she sets it down, she gently clears a spot in the dust, then replaces it. You blink. It's not about removing the dust. It's about making room within it. You sit again, this time on the warm ground, letting the stillness settle into your bones. A light haze of fine dirt floats in the air, catching the golden light and turning everything slightly surreal, like you're inside a memory. Maybe you are. The boy speaks again. When you sweep here, he says, you're not getting rid of the dust. You're telling it where to go. You let that sit. You wonder what parts of your life might feel calmer if you treated mess not as something to fight, but something to gently rearrange. The brooms are set aside as the sun slips lower. A conch shell sounds in the distance, signaling either the evening prayers or someone's lost pet. Hard to tell. You stand, legs tingling. Your hands are a little raw. Your robe is streaked with fine gray powder. You feel serene. You helped a god today, not by chanting or sacrificing goats or burning incense, but by sweeping around his courtyard and giving him space to breathe, even if he doesn't technically have lungs.
You leave the temple courtyard quietly, still brushing specks of holy dust from your sleeves. The city is winding down. The light has turned honey thick, shadows stretching like lazy cats across the ground. Somewhere, someone plays a stringed instrument, a simple, repetitive tune that makes you feel like you've known it forever. Your path leads you out toward the fields now, past the last rings of houses, past a tethered goat nibbling on reeds, toward the low canal systems that have nourished this land for millennia. Out here, Mesopotamia feels more open, more exposed, and the dust, if anything, is more aggressive. A man waves you over. He's ankle-deep in muck, sleeves rolled, wrestling with a bundle of reeds near a narrow ditch. You help him drag it clear, and he grins, handing you a jug of tepid water and wiping his brow with the back of his hand. Barley, he says, pointing to a cluster of short golden stalks waving softly in the breeze. We water it at dawn and dusk. The rest, well, he gestures toward the sky. Dust, ever patient, is already drifting in like a lazy tide. It doesn't pour, it creeps, settling over the stalks, coating the tiny green heads, mixing with the topsoil, waiting. You walk together through the rows. The barley is thick, stubborn, and humming with insects. At first glance, it looks like any field, warm, alive, promising. But up close, it's a daily war zone between moisture and dryness. You touch a stalk. Dust clings to your fingers. Mesopotamian farmers didn't just grow crops. They fought entropy. Every canal they dug, every time they dragged silt from the river, every palmful of water they sprinkled on the soil, it was all just stalling for time. Because eventually, if left alone, the dust would win. It always does. You pause at a large clay basin near the edge of a field. The man points at it. Offerings, he says, for the field gods, for balance. You peer inside. It's mostly dried mud now, but you see traces of things left behind, grains, ashes, a feather. And along the edge, once again, that soft halo of dust. Historians still argue whether dust was seen as blessing or blight in agriculture. Some texts hint that a fine dusting was welcome. It helped protect roots, held in moisture. Other texts describe desperate prayers for clear skies and clean crops. A woman joins you, carrying a small satchel of fish bones. For the soil, she says, scattering them carefully near a patch of wilted grain. And to confuse the spirits. You raise an eyebrow. She shrugs. Doesn't always work. You sit on a rock near a cracked irrigation ditch. The breeze is picked up slightly, and with it, more dust. It dances along the water's surface, rippling and settling, only to be stirred again by a passing dragonfly. You wonder how something so light can be so persistent. The man takes a palmful of dirt and crumbles it between his fingers. Too dry, he mutters. Tomorrow, we flood it.
And if the water fails? He doesn't answer. You see it in his eyes. There is no if, only dust. You walk further, now alone, past fields of chickpeas and garlic. Some plants thrive, others falter, but all bear the same faint coat, the whisper of the winds passing, the presence of something ancient, watchful, indifferent. You crouch near a row of onions, place your hand in the soil. It's warm, dry, layered with thin sediment that crumbles easily. Beneath that is better earth, moist, rich. Life still lingers under the surface. And it strikes you, this is Mesopotamian life. A layer of dust over everything, but beneath that, growth, survival, a soft, stubborn will. The sun kisses the horizon. The fields turn golden, then bronze, then almost blue. You rise, brushing off your hands. The dust stays. You begin the walk back to the city, passing a boy chasing a chicken, a woman collecting herbs, a man seated cross-legged beside a slowly leaking water jar. No one seems in a hurry. They all move as if they know that whatever is done today, the dust will be waiting tomorrow. You breathe in deeply and exhale. You don't fight the dust anymore. You walk with it. You return to the quieter edges of the city, just as the sky begins to fade into deep purples and soft golds. The breeze has stilled. For the first time today, you hear your own footsteps clearly. Soft thuds on hardened earth, punctuated by the occasional crunch of tiny pebbles or stray straw. It's here, in a shaded courtyard lined with faded murals and leaning date palms, that you meet an old priest sitting on a reed mat. He's alone, save for a clay bowl by his side and a line of faintly smoking incense. His robe is simple, unadorned, dusty, and his eyes scan you with the kind of quiet that has seen too much and expects little. You sit. No words, just dust. Eventually he speaks. Do you know why we leave our dead in the earth? You shake your head. Because it remembers. You wait. He leans forward, tapping the ground with one crooked finger. This remembers every step, every word, every drop of blood. You think it's just dirt, but it holds everything. He gestures to the bowl beside him. Inside is a grayish powder, almost like ash, but finer. Dust from the old temple, he says, before it fell. You peer closer. It doesn't look special. In fact, it looks like the same stuff that's been sneaking into your nose all day. He sees your skepticism and chuckles, a dry sound like wind through papyrus. We used to fear this dust. Now we fear forgetting. You sit in silence for a moment, then ask him if this dust, this memory, ever lies. Historians still debate the role of oral tradition in physical space in preserving Mesopotamian history. Some say the stories survived despite the dust, others say because of it. The priest shrugs. It remembers what it wants, same as we do. He reaches into the bowl and lets the powder drift through his fingers. The smoke from the incense catches it mid-air, and for a moment you swear you see something, a figure, a face, a flicker of something long gone. Then it's gone again, maybe never there. He tells you a story. Not a famous one, not a myth of kings or gods, just a story about a woman who used to sweep this courtyard every morning. She would hum the same tune every day, until one morning she didn't come. No one remembered her name, but the dust? It still hums, he says, sometimes, just softly enough to make you think you imagined it. You feel a chill crawl up your spine, not fear, just the sense that the past is watching or whispering. You thank the priest and stand. As you go, he offers you a small handful of the dust in a cloth pouch. Just in case, he says. You tuck it away gently, even though you're not sure what to do with it. It feels warm, or maybe that's your hand. The night deepens. You wander into a square where clay tablets are stored in rows of cubby-like shelves built into the walls. Some are cracked, some barely legible, others are pristine, sharp as if carved yesterday. A quiet scribe sits nearby, brushing dust off each tablet with a piece of soft cloth. He moves slowly, methodically. Each stroke is more reverent than the last. He looks up briefly, nods, and then continues. Not preserving words, preserving voices. You walk on. A family is gathered on a rooftop, sharing lentils and laughing in the low light. A child coughs and a woman pats his back gently, offering a sip of date juice. On the far side of the roof, a wide clay dish has collected a layer of dust throughout the day. The mother doesn't clean it. She just draws a small spiral with her finger and lets it be. That spiral stays with you. Not because it's beautiful, but because it's quiet, intentional, like someone left behind a thought for the dust to hold. You lie down in a quiet corner near the city wall, resting your head on your folded robe. The stone beneath you is warm, and the air smells like clay, smoke, and the faint sweetness of distant fruit trees. You exhale. The dust settles. It always does.
The wind wakes you. It's not loud, not violent, just steady, unapologetic. It stirs your robe, flutters the hem against your ankles, and sends a fresh curtain of dust tumbling across the stone near your feet. You sit up slowly, brushing your palms on your thighs out of habit more than hope. You're not clean. You're never going to be clean again. The stars overhead are dimmed by a haze, not clouds, but dust suspended in the upper air, catching and softening the moonlight like gauze across a lantern. The city sleeps, mostly, except for the storm. You see it in the distance, gathering like a shadow along the horizon. A slow-moving wall of ochre and ash, creeping in over the plain like it owns the place, which, in a way, it does. You've heard of Mesopotamian sandstorms, the way they arrive like ancient armies, the way they level huts, blind herds, pause rituals mid-chant. People don't argue with them. They wait, or hide, or sweep up afterward. You get moving. Following the flickering light of a brazier, you find your way to a public shelter near the market. An open-sided brick structure meant more for shade than safety. A few others have gathered here already. An elderly merchant still clutching his coin pouch, a pair of girls holding hands, and a young man with a goat that looks entirely too calm. The storm arrives slowly and all at once. At first, it's just a change in tone. The air deepens. Then the breeze turns grainy. Then visibility collapses like a curtain being drawn. Dust seeps in from every crack and corner, curling under walls, spilling over thresholds, breathing itself into every sleeve and sandal. Someone coughs, someone laughs. You do both. Sandstorms like this shaped Mesopotamian life. Crops died, journeys paused, even kings waited. There's a clay tablet somewhere listing a wedding rescheduled 3 times because of divine dust. You get it now. Historians still argue whether such storms were seen as omens or mere inconveniences. Some texts link them to angry gods. Others suggest they were seasonal guests, rude but reliable. You sit in the dim shelter and watch the world disappear behind a veil of tan and gold. The sound is muffled but constant, a low hiss, like the earth whispering too fast for you to understand. The old merchant beside you pulls his scarf higher and mutters, "Ashaku walks tonight." You nod, though your mouth is dry. Of course he does. The goat lets out a long, skeptical bleat. The storm doesn't rage. It persists. It's not a drama. It's a fact. A slow, relentless rearrangement of everything exposed. You feel your thoughts being softened by it, like corners on a worn stone tablet. Your edges dull. Your heartbeat slows. You let go of the day. When the wind finally eases, hours later, maybe minutes, time slips and storms. You blink against the sudden stillness. The dust is everywhere. But the people? Unbothered. They rise, stretch, shake their robes. One of the girls draws a spiral in the dust with her toe. The merchant checks his pouch. The goat yawns. The storm arrives slowly and all at once. At first, it's just a change in tone. The air deepens. Then the breeze turns grainy.
Then visibility collapses like a curtain being drawn. Dust seeps in from every crack and corner, curling under walls, spilling over thresholds, breathing itself into every sleeve and sandal. Someone coughs, someone laughs. You do both. Sandstorms like this shaped Mesopotamian life. Crops died, journeys paused, even kings waited. There's a clay tablet somewhere listing a wedding rescheduled 3 times because of divine dust. You get it now. Historians still argue whether such storms were seen as omens or mere inconveniences. Some texts link them to angry gods. Others suggest they were seasonal guests, rude but reliable. You sit in the dim shelter and watch the world disappear behind a veil of tan and gold. The sound is muffled but constant, a low hiss, like the earth whispering too fast for you to understand. The old merchant beside you pulls his scarf higher and mutters, "Ashaku walks tonight." You nod, though your mouth is dry. Of course he does. The goat lets out a long, skeptical bleat. The storm doesn't rage, it persists. It's not a drama, it's a fact. A slow, relentless rearrangement of everything exposed. You feel your thoughts being softened by it, like corners on a worn stone tablet. Your edges dull, your heartbeat slows. You let go of the day. When the wind finally eases, hours later, maybe minutes, time slips in storms. You blink against the sudden stillness. The storm has passed, but its memory clings to everything like a quiet sigh. You wake to a city that looks only slightly different. Roofs buried half an inch deeper, walls a touch softer, doorways narrower by the width of a fingernail. But to the people who live here, it's nothing new. You stretch, rise, and wander. The streets are already alive again. Vendors brush off their goods, temples reopen their shaded courtyards, and children turn fresh drifts of dust into games, drawing zigzags, leaping over dunes, kicking at particles that shimmer like golden fog. You follow the faint trail of a goat herd until you reach a low stone structure at the edge of the temple quarter. Inside, it's quiet. Stone benches line the walls. A narrow shelf holds clay tablets, some fresh, some ancient, some so dust-covered you mistake them for bricks. This is the courthouse. Mesopotamians were remarkably organized when it came to law. They had rules for everything: how much you owed for a broken cart, who got the oxen in a divorce, and exactly how many dates made a debt official. Civilization, it seems, is built on barley and fine print. You sit beside a scribe who's carefully brushing dust off a tablet. Not aggressively, just enough to read it. He mutters under his breath, 2 goats, 3 shekels, delivery disputed. He blows gently across the surface and sighs. Again with the goats. You offer to help. He hands you another tablet. You blow softly. A sneeze escapes before you can stop it. Careful, he says, smirking. That's the law you just inhaled. The air in here is thick, dry, silent, and filled with the accumulated debris of centuries of petty arguments. Dust in the courthouse isn't accidental, it's structural. You get the sense that some of these rulings only survived because they were ignored long enough to be buried and preserved. You try reading one. It's a complaint about stolen bread, scrawled in uneven cuneiform. The punishment? 2 days of sweeping the temple courtyard. You're not sure if that's justice or janitorial training. Historians still debate how seriously some of these rulings were taken. Some say they reflect a rigid bureaucratic system. Others believe many cases were informal, resolved with bartering, gossip, or, apparently, brooms. The judge enters. He's older than the dust, or maybe just shaped by it. His robe is a dull grayish brown, which could either be the fabric's color or the result of never quite shaking off the last 30 years of court cases. He sits. A plaintiff steps forward, a wiry man with a large clay jug and a tired expression. The defendant? A sleepy-looking merchant who immediately begins scratching his ear with a stylus. The issue? My neighbor's donkey sneezed in my water jar. There's a pause. The judge sighs, waves for the next case. You chuckle, but no one else does. Law is serious, even when it's ridiculous. More scribes arrive, stacking new tablets onto shelves. You notice many are wrapped in thin cloth, tied with reeds, and already layered in a thin veil of dust. You brush one gently with your sleeve and read, "Terms of land rental, 2 seasons of barley, 1 goat, shared well access." You think of the farmers from earlier, battling dust just to grow anything at all. And here it is, recorded neatly, calmly, dustily. The court's not busy. People drift in and out. A woman arguing about a stolen rug, a boy caught selling water that wasn't his, a priest defending a chicken that may or may not have entered a shrine uninvited. Each case brings more tablets, more dust. It settles over everything, on the judges, the plaintiffs, even justice itself. Not out of disrespect, just because. You run your hand over a bench. A trail follows, then disappears, as new dust immediately fills the shape you made. You wonder how many arguments were lost to the dust, how many verdicts simply eroded before anyone could remember to act on them, how many promises turned to powder, unnoticed, unfought. There's something comforting about it. You stand, bow politely to the judge, who does not look up, and leave. Outside, the sunlight feels sharper after the dimness of the courthouse. A breeze lifts a corner of your robe and swirls dust around your ankles like a tame spirit. You think of Ashaku, amused. You just inhaled a legal record, and possibly the sneeze of a donkey. You smile and move on. You follow the narrow streets to the city's edge, where homes grow farther apart and the silence deepens. The air is dry but peaceful, the kind of silence that feels more like listening than emptiness. A woman waves to you from under a bent fig tree. She's old, her robe faded to the color of old clay pots, her eyes bright beneath a dusk-lined brow. She gestures to a small structure behind her. Simple, low-walled, roofed in woven reeds and dried mud. You understand. A funeral is about to begin. You step through the low doorway into a room that smells of dates, incense, and faintly of earth. Inside, a group of people sit on reed mats, some singing softly, others simply sitting. At the center lies a wrapped form, small, fragile, cradled by dust and time. You sit with them. No one cries, not loudly. There are no sharp wails, no flailing grief, just breath and dust. Everyone here seems to understand. This is not an ending, it's a rejoining. The deceased, an older man you learn, was a potter. His tools are placed beside him. A small chisel, a smooth river stone, a piece of red-streaked clay. Symbols not of power, but of craft. Dust covers them. One of the mourners begins to recite something, part prayer, part story. She speaks of the man's work, his pots, his kiln that sometimes caught fire, the way he always whistled through his teeth when mixing clay. She smiles when she says this, as if he's still doing it somewhere. Then comes the dusting. Each mourner takes a handful of soil from a bowl and gently scatters it over the shrouded form. Not to hide, to return. The dust is soft, fine, and light. Some of it catches in the light that slips through the roof. It hangs there, weightless, like breath that forgot to leave. You hesitate, then follow. The earth in your palm is warm. You release it slowly. It falls with no sound. Historians still puzzle over Mesopotamian burial practices. Some were interred under floors, others outside city walls. Wealthier citizens had brick tombs, poorer ones woven reed mats and dirt. But what connects all of them is the earth, the return to it, the acceptance of it. The ritual continues. A priest lights a small oil lamp. The flame wavers but holds. Its glow paints the walls a deeper amber, the dust now gilded. He places it near the head of the body, then sets down a tiny figurine, a shaku again, cruder this time, just a lump with eyes. You watch, fascinated. Why include the dust god in death? An elder leans toward you and whispers, He carries what's left. You nod, not entirely sure what that means, but it feels right. You think about everything you've seen today: scribes shaping dusty tablets, farmers brushing fields, priests sweeping courtyards, and now this, the softest, slowest ritual of them all, one where the dust is not something to be cleaned, but something to be welcomed. The body is wrapped, lifted gently, and carried out. You follow. The burial site is close, just beyond a wall, beneath a lone tamarisk tree. The wind has already begun to shape low mounds of dust and earth into soft curves, like nature is preparing a cradle. The body is placed into the ground, not deeply, just enough. No coffin, no vault, just the earth and silence. You help push soil over the form. Everyone does, even the children. The wind picks up slightly, lifting a curl of dust and sending it drifting across the grave. It settles gently on the mound like a blanket. And somehow, that's the part that breaks you. Not the body, not the ritual, but the dust laying itself down, like memory. You step back. The others linger a moment. Then, one by one, they leave. No one speaks. Nothing needs to be said. You remain. For a bit longer, seated on a stone at the edge of the site. A small beetle crawls by. You follow its path until it disappears into the soil. You think of your own hands, now stained with the same earth that will one day take everyone. And it doesn't scare you. It comforts you. Because here, dust isn't death. It's reunion.
The sun hangs low, bleeding soft amber across the horizon as you walk slowly back toward the temple quarter. Your feet drag just a little more now, not out of fatigue, but out of reverence. You've helped lay someone to rest, and now the ground feels less like ground and more like memory. Soft, watchful, dusty. You turn a corner and find yourself back near the wide courtyard where temple statues sit, unmoving, yet unmistakably expressive in their stillness. They peer through you with carved stone eyes, worn smooth by centuries of wind and finger and prayer. You approach one, a tall figure of a seated god, arms folded, lips pressed into what could be serenity or silent judgment. Dust blankets his shoulders like a shawl. Tiny drifts pile into the creases of his robe, the folds of his sandals, even his eyes. A priest stands nearby on a stool, holding a bundle of damp cloth. He's trying, very carefully, to clean the statue. Not scrub it, not restore it, just keep it visible beneath the dust's slow claim. You watch him work. He dabs the cloth gently, pressing it into the stone like one might tend a wound. Every motion is deliberate, unhurried. The dust, of course, resists. It clings, it floats back, it settles again as soon as it's lifted. He sees you and gestures to a second stool. You join him. He hands you a small reed brush. Start with the eyes, he says, and goes back to wiping the base. You climb up, steady yourself, and begin brushing. The dust doesn't flee. It drifts lazily into the evening air, like it's tired of being clung to. The statue's eyes slowly reappear. Beneath the film, they sparkle, just a little. You exhale. You didn't expect that. You know, the priest says, people think gods don't notice dust. But they do. They just don't mind it the way we do. You glance over. Even Ashaku? He laughs. Especially him. It's said that in Mesopotamian temples, dust wasn't considered filth. It was sacred residue, evidence of time passing, of prayers given, of gods visited, or ignored. Historians still argue over whether temples had full-time dusters or if cleaning was a communal task, like a shared devotion. But here, watching the priest work, it feels personal, like a quiet conversation between human and divine, carried out one brushstroke at a time. Nearby, a small group of women light lamps along the courtyard's edge. The flames flicker, reflecting off polished stones and the sheen of lightly dusted altars.
Each lamp is placed just far enough apart that their light overlaps, casting overlapping halos in the growing dark. You continue brushing. The statue seems lighter now, not physically, spiritually, like you've released it from something, or just reminded it someone still cares. The priest leans against the stool and speaks again. Dust is how the gods hide, not because they're angry, just tired, waiting for someone to notice. You look across the courtyard. Other statues sit untouched, some half-collapsed, some leaning, some nearly buried in time. You wonder how long it's been since someone last reached for them. You wonder if gods feel lonely. The priest steps down. You finish with the statue's hands and join him. He pats your shoulder, leaving a dusty print on your tunic. Neither of you brushes it off. You watch as he folds his cloth, rinses it in a basin, then lays it over a stone ledge to dry. The wind picks up just enough to flutter its edges. And then, without fanfare, he leaves. No chant, no bow, just a soft whistle as he walks into the lamplit night. You remain a while longer, not brushing, just being. You sit at the statue's base and lean back against its cool stone legs. It's solid, heavy, ancient, and gently coated in the dust you didn't clean. A gift, maybe, a reminder that everything sacred eventually gathers dust, and everything dusty was once sacred. The moon is high now, half veiled behind a soft, swirling haze. The air is cooler, and for the first time in what feels like days, you notice how quiet the city has become. The dust has settled, literally and figuratively. You wander through the narrow alleys behind the main temple complex, where walls lean into each other and the stars peek down between cracks in the roofline. It's the kind of place where secrets live, and scholars. You hear them before you see them. 3 voices, low and animated, drifting from a small side chamber lit only by a single flickering oil lamp. You pause at the edge of the doorway. Inside, seated cross-legged on reed mats, are 3 men surrounded by stacks of clay tablets, some newly pressed, others ancient and crumbling. Each man is dusty in the way all serious thinkers tend to be, unaware of their own untidiness, yet fiercely opinionated about the structure of the universe. They don't notice you at first. The youngest is mid-rant, but that doesn't prove a shaku was real. It just shows they were tired of sweeping. The oldest raises a hand and replies with calm, scholar-patient fatigue. Intent does not equal divinity, but repetition creates belief, and belief carves gods. The third one, arms folded, murmurs, and yet dust is the only thing we still find on every single altar. You clear your throat. They look up, a pause, then, wordlessly, the oldest gestures for you to sit. You do. A tablet is passed your way. It's heavy and warm from handling. Etched into it are fragments of a hymn, part praise, part complaint, addressed to a shaku. The wording is strange, playful. It calls him the lazy god who never leaves, he who eats the edges of memory, and, curiously, the powder in the lungs of kings. You raise an eyebrow. The youngest scholar smirks. Poetry, he says, or satire, or both. Depends which century you ask. Historians still argue whether a shaku was a minor household spirit or a real regional deity with cult status. The evidence is scattered. Mentions in hymns, scribbled invocations in the margins of law codes, graffiti that may or may not be jokes. The oldest scholar, eyes soft with dusk, leans toward you. There's a tablet from Nippur, he says, that describes a king leaving an offering of brooms. You blink. Brooms, he repeats, to keep the dust away, or maybe to honor it, maybe both. The third scholar chimes in. It's possible a shaku wasn't a god at all, just a metaphor, the way old people talk about the creeping years or the slow hand. You give something weight, and eventually it becomes a name. You sit with that. In a world where rivers flood, empires fall, and the sun burns your skin dry, maybe naming the dust isn't worship. Maybe it's just coping. A lizard scurries along the wall behind you. The flame in the oil lamp flickers, casting long, angular shadows that make the room feel like it's gently pulsing. One scholar points to a tablet with a half-finished translation. This one, he says, calls a shaku the breath of forgetting. You ask, forgetting what? Whatever you're not ready to remember, he says, simply. That hits harder than expected. They offer you a stylus and a fresh tablet. Write what you think, one says. You hesitate. Then, slowly, you press the stylus into the soft clay. The surface yields. You write a single word. Stillness. The youngest scholar leans in, reads it, and smiles. Fitting. You spend the next hour listening, really listening, to the quiet debates of people who care far too much about the metaphysical implications of soil. But it's oddly comforting. Like dust itself, their thoughts don't land all at once. They drift, settle, linger. Eventually, the lamp burns low. One of the scholars begins to nod off, tablet still balanced on his knee. The others pack their work away slowly, wrapping the older tablets in linen and sliding them into niches in the walls. You thank them, bow slightly, and step back into the cool night. The stars are clearer now. The air still hums with fine powder, but it feels lighter, thoughtful, as if the dust, too, has been part of the discussion. As you walk, you look back, once, just once, and think, maybe gods don't need temples. Maybe they just need someone to wonder about them. The youngest scholar leans in, reads it, and smiles. Fitting. You spend the next hour listening, really listening, to the quiet debates of people who care far too much about the metaphysical implications of soil. But it's oddly comforting. Like dust itself, their thoughts don't land all at once. They drift, settle, linger. Eventually, the lamp burns low. One of the scholars begins to nod off, tablet still balanced on his knee. You walk without hurry now. The city is near silent, softened beneath its nightly veil of dust. Roofs shimmer faintly under moonlight. Doorways are closed. Lamps flicker like sleepy fireflies. It feels like the whole world is holding its breath. You follow a narrow canal, the water sluggish, barely moving, lined with reeds and cracked clay. You pause on a small stone bridge, leaning over the edge. The surface is smooth and silty, reflecting only faint shapes. You watch it for a while, half expecting a ripple to speak or a reflection to blink. Instead, a soft crunch breaks the stillness. You turn to see two figures in the distance, carefully moving through the ruins of what was once an older part of the city. It's a dig site, archaeologists. Not from your time in Mesopotamia, but from yours. Modern clothing, gloves, flashlights with red filters. They don't see you, not really. They see outlines, grids, sediment layers, bones and bricks. Their hands are gentle, practiced. They brush with horsehair brushes, scrape with tools the size of pencils, and breathe through cloth masks to avoid inhaling, well, history. You follow at a respectful distance. They've uncovered a corner of an ancient home, a hearth, a jar, part of a wall where someone once scratched tally marks. Maybe days, maybe debts, maybe sheep. One of them pauses, wiping sweat, and mutters, "Can't believe how much dust is still here." You smile. Historians still debate whether modern excavations preserve or disturb, whether brushing away the dust reveals the past or erases its natural state. But watching them now, you see reverence, not worship, just care. They lift a small object from the ground, a broken figurine. One eye chipped, limbs missing, the face oddly familiar. It's a shaku, or what's left of him. The archaeologist frowns, puzzled, brushing the clay gently. Looks like some kind of house spirit? The other one shrugs. Or a joke. People made weird stuff. You're tempted to say something, to explain, but you don't. You simply watch as they wrap him in linen, label the bag with careful script, and place him in a box that will fly across continents. He'll sit in a lab next, then a drawer. Maybe, someday, a museum. Or maybe he won't. Maybe he'll stay in storage, quiet, forgotten, covered in the one thing he understands best. You move on, through the site, past markers and stakes, through layers of moonlit ruin. This city is built on itself, civilizations piled like bedsheets, each thinner than the last. Homes become floors, streets become ceilings, temples vanish beneath courtyards. Dust buries everything equally. That's the rule. You crouch beside a half-uncovered step. Someone's sandal once wore it smooth. You imagine their weight, their day, their breath. You press your palm into the surface and feel warmth, not from the sun, but from the earth itself. It remembers. In the distance, the archaeologists pack up. Their lights blink off, one by one. You're alone again. The air feels alive, not loud, just aware. A breeze picks up, gentle, persistent. It doesn't sting, it doesn't roar. It carries the same calm whisper that's followed you all day. The same dust. It swirls around your ankles, hugs the corners of the ruins, lingers in the hollows. And then, just for a second, you swear you hear something. Not a voice, not a word. Just the feeling of someone nodding. A presence. A shaku maybe. Or the city itself. You breathe in, slowly. Let the dust settle in your lungs. You're not afraid of it anymore. You know now, this place isn't haunted. It's held. Held by memory, by particles, by layers of breath and crumble and devotion. A city always shifting, always disintegrating, always quietly existing beneath everything else. You leave the ruins, brushing past a line of dried palms, and head back toward the living city, though now you're not sure where one ends and the other begin. Maybe they never did.
You wander slowly now, back through the familiar streets, if you can still call them that. They feel different under your feet, not because the path has changed, but because you have. Every wall is dusted in memory. Every doorway breathes gently, as though holding stories just behind the threshold. You no longer try to wipe the dust off your clothes or out of your hair. You let it cling, let it settle. You pass a child crouched on the ground, dragging a stick in lazy circles through a fresh layer of fine powder. Spiral after spiral. No gold, no rush, just motion. She looks up at you with wide eyes, then back down, keeps drawing. A little priest in the making, perhaps, or maybe just a child learning the ancient language of forgetting. You find your way back to the edge of the temple complex where you first began this strange, quiet journey. The shrine to Ashaku still sits tucked in shadow, wrapped in hush. The small figure is still there, half-coated in fresh dust again. You sit beside him. This time, you don't question. You simply observe. The world slows. Crickets murmur. A wind stirs once, twice, and dies again. The dust around your ankles lifts and returns like breath. You've seen temples, laws, funerals, storms. You've written in clay, swept sacred stones, watched the earth receive its children, and then continue on as if nothing had changed. But everything has changed. You think of the farmers fighting dryness with cracked hands, the scribes crafting permanence from impermanence, the judges ruling in rooms where the verdicts settle into the same silence that holds every other sound. And above it all, below it all, in it all, dust. Dust doesn't rush. It doesn't shout. It endures. Historians may never agree on what Ashaku truly represented. A god? A joke? A metaphor? A mistake that lasted 2,000 years too long? But you understand now, he doesn't need to be one thing. He never did. He's what remains when everything else goes. You take a deep breath, and for the first time, you welcome the grit in your lungs. It connects you to everyone before, to everyone after. The child across the square draws one final spiral and stands. You watch the dust she stirred slowly settle again.
And in that settling, you feel it. Peace. Let the night deepen now. Let the wind calm. The dust has settled across the quiet courtyards and soft temple stones. The city rests in layers, layers of time, of memory, of tiny forgotten stories carried on the backs of each grain. You've walked the alleys, the ziggurats, the fields. You've touched the past, and it has touched you back. The gods are silent now, not because they've left, but because you've listened. Let your breath slow. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the weight of the day soften, like loose soil crumbling beneath tired hands. Let go of the need to sweep it all away. Not everything must be cleaned. Not everything must be clear. Sometimes things are meant to blur at the edges, to soften, to return. So close your eyes now and know this. You are part of a long, long story, older than writing, older than cities, older even than the first footprints pressed into this ground. You are dust, and to dust you will return. But that's not an ending. That's a reunion. A quiet folding back into everything. And somewhere, deep in the cradle of civilization, the god of dust turns gently in his sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.